In 2023, something happened at the University of Copenhagen's laboratory that left neurobiologists around the world utterly stunned. A group of scientists led by Anders Garm took a Caribbean box jellyfish, a tiny, translucent creature the size of a fingernail, and proved that it can learn, not just to avoid a stimulus or pull away from pain, but to actually learn, connecting one signal to another and changing its behavior based on the experience gained. Think about that. This jellyfish has no brain, none at all. Not a single neuron that could be considered a central processor. It has about 1,000 nerve cells. By comparison, a fly has 100,000 and a human has 86 billion. Yet this creature with 1,000 cells learned to recognize a danger it had previously overlooked in just 7.5 minutes. The experiment was set up like this. The jellyfish was placed in a container with striped walls. The stripes were low contrast, almost indistinguishable from the background. The jellyfish collided with the walls because it couldn't see them, but after 7.5 minutes, it began to maintain a distance from the walls 50% farther away, and the number of successful evasions increased fourfold. The jellyfish connected the visual signal, the blurred stripes, with the physical collision. It understood that if it saw those stripes, there was a wall ahead. This is called associative learning, and until this point, no one believed that cnidarians were capable of such a thing. And this is where it gets even more interesting. When the scientists published their findings, the first question was, okay, but where exactly in the jellyfish's body does learning occur? There's no brain, so something else must be taking on that function. And they found an answer that was even stranger than the fact of learning itself. The box jellyfish has structures called rhopalia. These are small sensory nodes, each containing a group of eyes and a cluster of neurons. The box jellyfish has several rhopalia, and each one functions as an independent unit. So, the scientists extracted the rhopalia from the jellyfish's body, cut them out, separated them from the organism, and conducted the same experiment. The isolated rhopalia, lying in a petri dish, also learned to form associative connections. Outside the body, without the organism, a piece of nerve tissue the size of a grain of salt learned independently. This isn't a reflex. A reflex is when you pull your hand away from something hot, and there's no learning, no new knowledge involved. Here, we have a full formation of a new connection between two signals that were originally unrelated. And this is done by a cluster of several hundred neurons, not connected to anything. When Ken Cheng from Macquarie University learned about this, he said something that makes us rethink everything we know about the brain and intelligence. Cnidarians are a sister group to all bilaterians, to all animals that have a right and left side, to insects, mollusks, fish, and us. If jellyfish can learn associatively, then this ability wasn't invented in some advanced branch of evolution. It has been there from the very beginning. Associative learning may turn out to be a fundamental property of any nervous system at all, so fundamental that it appeared before the brain. But let's rewind and figure out what a jellyfish is as a physical object, because even here, things aren't as they seem. When jellyfish are discussed in school, there's usually a list of what they lack. No brain, no heart, no lungs, no blood, no bones. After this list, one gets the impression that a jellyfish is just an empty bag of water, a primitive tube that simply drifts in the current. This is a gross misperception. The jellyfish's body is made up of mesoglia, a gelatinous mass that consists of 95 to 97% water. The remaining 3 to 5% is made up of proteins and collagen, and this collagen is now causing a real stir in the scientific community. Up to 75% of all the protein in a jellyfish's body is collagen. This is the same protein that gives our skin elasticity, the strength of tendons, and the flexibility of blood vessels. We obtain collagen from cows and pigs, but there are serious issues with that. Animal collagen carries the risk of prion diseases. Those are the diseases where proteins in the brain fold incorrectly and are untreatable. Additionally, collagen from pigs and cows is unsuitable for a significant portion of the world's population for religious reasons. And this is where the jellyfish comes into play. In 2025, a group of researchers from China and the United Kingdom published a comprehensive review in the journal Applied Food Research, calling jellyfish collagen a transformative marine biomaterial, not just an alternative, but a material with additional properties: antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and capable of influencing the immune system. In other words, the substance that jellyfish are literally made of could become the foundation for a new generation of cosmetics, biomedical materials, and food additives. This creates a paradoxical picture. A creature that is 95% water turns out to be more valuable than many complex organisms, not because it is complex, but because those remaining 5% are incredibly efficient. Now let's talk about the nervous system. We've already mentioned that there is no brain, but what exists in its place deserves a separate discussion, because it's not just a primitive nervous network, as textbooks say. It's a distributed computing system. If the brain is a central server to which all devices are connected, then the jellyfish's nervous system is a network of independent computers, each making decisions on its own while somehow coordinating with the others. Without a boss, without a control center, without a single point of failure. Engineers and artificial intelligence specialists are currently studying this very principle. Because most of our technologies are built on a centralized architecture, there's a main processor that commands everything. If it fails, the whole system collapses. But the jellyfish doesn't have that problem at all. You can cut off part of its body, and the remaining part will continue to function. You can remove a ropallium, and it will continue to learn separately from the organism. This is an architecture that engineers call fault-tolerant, and the jellyfish implemented it hundreds of millions of years before we coined that term. And since we're talking about engineering, let's discuss how the jellyfish moves, because its method of locomotion is now being replicated by the best robotics labs in the world. The jellyfish contracts its bell, expels water, and moves through reactive thrust. But it does this so efficiently that it consumes an insignificant amount of energy. In 2023, a team from the Max Planck Institute for Intelligent Systems in Stuttgart built a jellyfish robot with a diameter of 16 centimeters. This robot moved completely silently, consuming about 100 milliwatts. That's tens of times less than ordinary underwater drones, and could manipulate objects without touching them. It created water currents that moved objects without physical contact. 2 years later, in 2025, Northwestern Polytechnical University in Xi'an presented an even more impressive development. Their jellyfish robot was made from hydrogel electrodes and turned out to be almost indistinguishable from a real jellyfish, so much so that marine animals did not perceive it as a foreign object. Its energy consumption was 28.5 milliwatts. For comparison, a regular LED flashlight on a phone consumes 10 times more. But the boldest project was launched by John DeBerry from the California Institute of Technology. He didn't build a robot that mimicked a jellyfish. He took a live jellyfish and turned it into a robot. DeBerry equipped real jellyfish with miniature electronics and prosthetic bells that allowed for controlling their movement. Electrical stimulation tripled the jellyfish's swimming speed while keeping energy expenditure minimal. These biohybrid jellyfish can carry scientific instruments and dive to depths inaccessible to ordinary underwater vehicles. DeBerry puts it this way: jellyfish were the first ocean explorers long before us. He's working on giving them a brain, an electronic decision-making system that will allow these living platforms to act independently underwater. This is cheaper, more environmentally friendly, and in some ways more elegant than building yet another deep-sea drone out of titanium and plastic. And here's what's most astonishing about all this. We tend to think of evolution as a movement from simple to complex. That progress means more organs, more neurons, more specialization. But the jellyfish tells us, no, that's not the only path. You can do without a brain and still learn. You can be 95% water and still contain materials that the best labs in the world are after. You can move so efficiently that 21st century engineers replicate your design because they can't come up with anything better. The jellyfish is not a primitive organism. It's a radically different answer to the question of how to be alive. And this answer, as we will see in the second part, is over 500 million years old. We've just established that the jellyfish isn't a primitive bag of water, but a distributed system capable of learning without a brain, moving more efficiently than any underwater robot, and containing materials that biotechnological companies are eager to obtain. But that's about the jellyfish of today. Now let's talk about how long it's been around, because when you learn this number, a lot will fall into place. Jellyfish have existed for over 500 million years. That number is so vast that it's hard to comprehend, so let's try to put it in perspective. Dinosaurs appeared around 230 million years ago and went extinct 66 million years ago. They ruled the planet for 164 million years, and we consider them one of the most successful animals in Earth's history. Well, jellyfish had already been swimming in the ocean for 300 million years before the first dinosaur. They survived all 5 mass extinctions, including the Permian extinction, the one that wiped out 96% of marine species. They were here before fish, before trees, before insects. When the first jellyfish appeared, there was nothing alive on land, no plants, no animals, just bare rocks and empty continents. And here's where a paleontological paradox arises that has puzzled scientists for a long time. How do we even know that jellyfish are so ancient if their bodies can't turn into fossils? A jellyfish is, as we remember, 95% water. When it dies, its soft tissues decompose within hours. Bones don't remain because there are no bones. Shells don't remain because there are no shells. By all laws of paleontology, jellyfish shouldn't leave traces in the Earth's record, and yet. In 2007, geologists in Wisconsin discovered something truly incredible. In the sandstone of the Upper Cambrian, rock that's about 500 million years old, they found a mass burial of fossilized jellyfish. Not just one specimen, but an entire group. And they were preserved so well that the outlines of the tentacles and bell could be distinguished. For a soft-bodied organism to turn into a fossil, it needs to be buried almost instantly, covered by sediment within minutes, preventing the tissues from decomposing. Geologist Ronald Pickerill from the University of New Brunswick, upon seeing these samples, said that the burial rate must have been extreme. Some catastrophic sediment discharge must have covered an entire group of jellyfish in one blow, and they were frozen in stone for 500 million years. And this is considering that we've surely only found a tiny fraction of what existed. Most jellyfish throughout Earth's history simply dissolved, leaving no trace. We judge 500 million years of evolution based on a few random impressions that arose due to geological catastrophes. It's like trying to reconstruct the contents of a library from 3 charred pages. And every year, it turns out we know even less than we thought. In 2023, a new species of deep-sea jellyfish was described in the journal Zootaxa, discovered at a depth of 800 meters inside the Sumisu underwater volcano near the Ogasawara Islands in Japan. It was named Sanjordia pagesi, informally known as St. George's jellyfish, because a bright red cross is visible on its translucent body. But it's not just about the name. The point is that this jellyfish turned out to be so genetically distant from all known species that a new genus and even a whole new subfamily had to be created for it. It lived inside an underwater volcano at a depth of nearly 1 kilometer, and we had no idea it existed until 2023. Then, in November 2025, Japanese scientists described yet another new species, a Portuguese man-o-war named Physalia mikazuki, or samurai jellyfish. It was found in northern waters of Japan, and genetic analysis showed that it differs significantly from its tropical relatives. 500 million years of evolution, and we're still discovering fundamentally new forms that were hiding right under our noses. So how have jellyfish managed to last so long? What exactly makes them so resilient? For a long time, the answer was vague. They're just very well adapted. But in recent years, genetics has started to provide concrete answers, and they're linked to one of the most astonishing discoveries in 21st century biology. In 2022, a team from the University of Oviedo in Spain, led by Pascual Torner, did what no one had done before. They fully sequenced the genomes of 2 species of jellyfish from the genus Turritopsis. One species, Turritopsis dohrnii, is the one known as the immortal jellyfish. The other, Turritopsis rubra, is a close relative that doesn't possess immortality. It's an ordinary, mortal jellyfish. Comparing these 2 genomes, almost 1,000 genes related to aging and DNA repair, revealed specific mechanisms that distinguish the immortal species from the mortal one. The immortal Turritopsis showed enhancements in 3 key systems. The first is the maintenance of telomere length. Telomeres are protective caps at the ends of chromosomes that shorten with each cell division. When they become too short, the cell stops dividing and ages. The mechanism for maintaining these caps in the immortal jellyfish works significantly more effectively than in its mortal relative. The second system is protection against oxidative stress. Every living cell produces aggressive molecules, free radicals, during its processes, which damage DNA and proteins. This is one of the main causes of aging. The immortal jellyfish handles these damages better. And the third, perhaps the most unexpected, is the suppression of transposons. Transposons are segments of DNA that can copy themselves and insert their copies into other parts of the genome. They're sometimes called genetic parasites, or jumping genes. In most organisms, transposons become increasingly active with age, introducing chaos into the genome and accelerating aging. In the immortal jellyfish, the system for suppressing these parasites works more powerfully. But what exactly makes the immortal jellyfish immortal in practice? What can it do that no one else can? Here, we need to tell a story that begins with 2 Italian scientists and sounds like science fiction. In 1996, Stefano Pirino and Fernando Buero published a paper describing a phenomenon that had no parallels in biology. They observed how an adult Turritopsis jellyfish, having reached maturity, under certain conditions began the process of reverse development. It didn't die. It didn't go into hibernation. It literally rewound its life cycle. The adult jellyfish transformed back into a polyp, the stage from which a jellyfish's life begins. As if a butterfly crawled back into its cocoon and became a caterpillar again. Then from that polyp, a jellyfish would grow again. And this cycle, apparently, can repeat indefinitely. When the paper was published, the scientific community reacted not with enthusiasm but skepticism. Reverse development contradicted everything biologists knew about animal life cycles. Development was considered a one-way process. Cells differentiate, specialize, and there's no going back. Yet here was someone claiming that a jellyfish could hit the reset button. It took years of independent confirmations before the scientific community accepted this as an established fact. In 2021, Matsumoto and Millett from the University of Texas unearthed another layer of this story. They created a complete transcriptome of Turritopsis, essentially a catalog of all the genes that are active at each stage of reverse transformation. They discovered that at the cis stage, an intermediate phase between jellyfish and polyp, when the organism is an amorphous mass of cells, genes related to lifespan regulation and DNA repair are activated. At this moment, the organism isn't just reverting to an earlier stage, it's actively repairing itself at the molecular level. And one more fundamentally important result: the polyp that arises from reverse development and an ordinary colonial polyp are not the same. They differ in gene expression. The rewound organism isn't an exact copy of the original. It's restructured, reprocessed, rebuilt anew. It's not rewinding a tape to the beginning. It's more like a rewrite with improvements. And yet the main mystery remains unsolved. What exactly triggers reverse development? It's known that stress, starvation, physical damage, and sudden changes in water temperature can serve as triggers. But what specific molecular chain sends the command to the cells to return to the beginning? That question is still open. Scientists around the world are working to unravel it, because if we understand this mechanism, the implications for medicine could be enormous. Not immortality for humans, that's in the realm of fantasy, but understanding how cells can be returned to a youthful state could revolutionize the approach to treating age-related diseases. Then in October 2024, the story became even more interesting. An article published in the journal PNAS showed that reverse development isn't a unique trick of just one jellyfish. It turned out that the comb jelly Nemiopsis can also rewind its life cycle. And this is fundamentally important because comb jellies aren't jellyfish at all. They look similar, but belong to a completely different type of animal. According to modern genetic data, comb jellies are the oldest branch of multicellular animals on the planet. And if reverse development exists in both cnidarians, of which jellyfish are a part, and in comb jellies, then this mechanism could have arisen before these two lines diverged. And they diverged over 600 million years ago. This raises a completely mind-boggling question. Could the ability for biological rewinding not be a rare exception, not an evolutionary oddity, but an inherent property of multicellular life? Perhaps the first multicellular organisms on Earth could do this, and most lines simply lost this ability over the course of evolution, while jellyfish and comb jellies retained it. If that's the case, then we haven't just found a strange jellyfish that doesn't age. We found a window into the past of life on Earth, into the times when cells hadn't yet forgotten how to be young. So, we've discovered that jellyfish can learn without a brain, live longer than any other known animal, and in some cases can literally rewind their life cycle. It sounds like the perfect creature, but this perfection has another side, one that sends tens of thousands of people to hospitals each year and causes billions of dollars in damage. Let's talk about how jellyfish can be dangerous, how they can be beneficial, and why the line between these two aspects is often much thinner than it seems. Let's start with their weaponry. Jellyfish have stinging cells called nematocysts. These are microscopic capsules located on their tentacles, each containing a coiled thread with venom. When something touches a tentacle, the capsule triggers. The thread shoots out and pierces the victim. On its own, that doesn't sound too impressive until you learn the details. The pressure inside a nematocyst before firing reaches 150 atmospheres. 150 atmospheres is the pressure found 1.5 kilometers underwater. This is one of the highest pressures created by biological systems on the planet. The firing of a nematocyst takes a few microseconds and is one of the fastest mechanical processes in nature. A cell, just a fraction of a millimeter in size, generates a force comparable to industrial equipment. And the venom delivered by this mechanism is equally impressive. Different species of jellyfish have toxins that work in completely different ways because over hundreds of millions of years of evolution, each lineage of jellyfish has honed its chemical weaponry for specific tasks. Some venoms attack ion channels in nerve cells, essentially shutting off the electrical wiring in the victim's body. Others destroy the membranes of red blood cells, causing mass death. Some directly target the heart muscle, disrupting its rhythm. But here's what's interesting. The same components that make jellyfish venom dangerous also attract the attention of pharmacologists. peptides from the venom of certain jellyfish species have shown the ability to kill bacteria and suppress the growth of tumor cells in laboratory conditions. The logic is simple. If a molecule can precisely and effectively destroy a cell membrane, maybe it can be directed against the cells we want to eliminate, against antibiotic-resistant bacteria or cancer cells. Research is still in its early stages, but the principle of turning venom into medicine has been working in healthcare for a long time. Just remember that captopril, one of the most important drugs for treating heart failure, was developed from the venom of the South American pit viper. Now, let's move on to a topic that sounds so unexpected, it's hard to believe at first. Jellyfish and plastic. More specifically, jellyfish as a filter for plastic. The Go Jelly project, funded by the European Union, has brought together scientists from several countries with one goal: to find out if jellyfish can be used to combat microplastics. Microplastics are tiny plastic particles smaller than 5 millimeters, now found everywhere, in water, soil, air, human blood, and even in the placenta. The problem is colossal, and standard filters at wastewater treatment plants are far from fully addressing it. Researchers from the University of Southern Denmark, led by Jamila Javidpour, discovered that the mucus produced by jellyfish can bind to polystyrene microplastic particles. Jellyfish mucus acts like a biological glue for plastic particles. It captures them and clumps them together, making them easy to filter out. The idea behind the Go Jelly project is to use jellyfish mucus, or its synthetic analogs, as an additional step in wastewater treatment. Given that jellyfish are becoming more abundant in the world's oceans and many countries don't know what to do with them, turning a problem into a resource seems like an elegant solution. But there's also a downside to this connection between jellyfish and plastic. Jellyfish not only catch microplastics, they also absorb them. A study conducted in the North Atlantic revealed a disconcerting result. 97% of the surveyed jellyfish of the species Pelagia noctiluca contained microplastics in their digestive cavities. 97 out of 100. Mostly, these were cotton microfibers, those that detach from our clothes during washing and enter the ocean through the sewage system. And then the food chain kicks in. Jellyfish are eaten by sea turtles, sunfish, and certain species of seabirds. Through them, microplastics are passed along, from predator to predator, from link to link. Ultimately, they could potentially reach humans. A jellyfish, which is 95% water, turns out to be an effective transport vehicle for the pollutants we dump into the ocean. We've poisoned the water, and the jellyfish return that poison to us through the food chain. Since we're talking about food, let's discuss another aspect of the practical use of jellyfish, which relates to the collagen we mentioned earlier. In May 2026, a paper was published in the journal Frontiers in Marine Science, focusing on the Mediterranean jellyfish Rhizostoma pulmo. This jellyfish regularly ends up in fishermen's nets as bycatch. It's caught accidentally while fishing for other species and is usually just thrown away. Researchers showed that this bycatch can be transformed into a sustainable source of collagen for the cosmetic and biomedical industries. And it's not just about face creams, although that's part of it too. From jellyfish collagen, hydrogels are already being produced, soft, water-saturated materials used in medicine. They're making membranes and sponges for tissue engineering. They're creating three-dimensional matrices, scaffolds on which living cells can be grown to repair damaged tissues. They're developing next-generation wound dressings and drug delivery systems that release medication gradually, at the right place and time. Why jellyfish collagen instead of the more common bovine or porcine collagen? Because it has low immunogenicity. Humans react to it much less than to animal collagen, meaning there's a lower risk of rejection and allergic reactions. And because it has high biocompatibility, it integrates well into living tissues without causing inflammation. For regenerative medicine, the field focused on restoring and growing tissues and organs These properties are critically important. It turns out that a creature that fishermen have considered a useless nuisance for centuries is a source of materials that could change medicine. And the more jellyfish there are in the ocean, and their numbers are increasing, which we'll discuss shortly, the more accessible this resource becomes. Because there's another topic that can't be overlooked when discussing jellyfish. Their numbers are increasing significantly, and the reasons for this are directly related to what we're doing to the planet. Let's start with a specific example. Off the coast of Japan, the Nomura jellyfish periodically appears, a gigantic creature that can reach 2 meters in diameter and weigh up to 200 kilograms. Imagine an animal the size of a refrigerator and weighing as much as an adult man, made almost entirely of water and jelly. These jellyfish appear in waves, and each wave causes colossal damage to the fishing industry. They clog nets, making the catch unusable, they damage equipment, and they sting fishermen. Japanese scientists link the invasions of Nomura jellyfish to 2 factors. The first is overfishing in the Yellow Sea. When too much fish is caught, the competitors of jellyfish, those species that fed on the same plankton and occupied the same ecological niches, disappear. The freed space is immediately filled by jellyfish, which reproduce faster and are hardier than fish. The second factor is the warming of ocean currents, which accelerates the metabolism and reproduction of jellyfish. And this isn't just a local problem in Japan. Box jellyfish, which used to be found only in tropical waters, are increasingly being spotted in the Mediterranean Sea and along the northern European coasts. They're moving northward in pursuit of warmer waters, and beaches that have never had issues with jellyfish are now forced to put up warning flags. Ocean acidification is another blow to the marine ecosystem, destroying corals and mollusks. Their shells and skeletons are made of calcium carbonate, and in more acidic water, they literally dissolve. Corals and mollusks compete with jellyfish for space and food, and when they disappear, jellyfish seize the available ecological niches without hesitation. Heat waves in the ocean, periods of abnormally high water temperatures, have become more frequent in recent decades. Each temperature spike accelerates jellyfish metabolism, shortens their maturation time, and increases their offspring. A study published in the journal Nature Climate Change, based on data from the 1950s to the 2010s, confirmed a general trend. Jellyfish populations are rising in most of the studied regions of the world's oceans. Here's what's concerning about all this. Jellyfish are not an indicator of a healthy ocean. The increase in jellyfish numbers is a symptom that the marine ecosystem is losing its balance. As fish populations decline, as corals die, as waters warm and acidify, jellyfish fill the vacated spaces. They're not to blame for what's happening. They're simply better adapted to the conditions we create. We're removing their competitors, we're heating their habitat, and we're providing them with food in the form of excess plankton that thrives due to fertilizer runoff from fields. Jellyfish do what they've been doing for the last 500 million years. They occupy all available space. It creates a vicious cycle. We pollute the ocean. Jellyfish increase in number. They accumulate our microplastics. We get that plastic back through the food chain. We overfish. Jellyfish fill that niche. Fish populations decrease further because jellyfish eat eggs and larvae. We catch even fewer fish. But there's another side to this cycle. Jellyfish can be utilized. Their collagen is worth more than the fish they replace. Their mucus can filter the very microplastics they carry. Their toxins contain molecules that could lead to new medicines. Their sheer presence in such numbers is a signal we can read if we choose to. A signal that something is wrong with the ocean and that we need to change our approach. Jellyfish have existed for 500 million years, not because they're strong, but because they're adaptable. They don't fight against conditions. They adjust to them faster than anything else, and now they're adapting to the conditions we've created. The question is whether we can be even half as adaptable. We've come a long way. We've examined the structure of the jellyfish. look back at its past spanning 500 million years, discuss toxins, collagen, microplastics, and how jellyfish are taking over the ocean while we deplete it. But the most important part I saved for last, because this final section isn't about the jellyfish. It's about us. It's about how one brainless, jelly-like creature forces us to reconsider things we thought were obvious. Let's return to Anders Garm's experiment from Copenhagen, which we started in the first part, and look at it from a different angle. The jellyfish learned to associate blurred stripes on the walls with the danger of collision. This associative learning is the same basic mechanism that allows Pavlov's dog to connect a bell with food, and you to link the smell of your mom's pancakes with Sunday morning. It's a fundamental building block of what we call cognition. But remember the detail that makes this experiment truly strange. The rhopalia, sensory nodes of the jellyfish that contain eyes and neurons, learn independently, even when cut from the body. A few hundred nerve cells, extracted from the organism and placed in a dish of seawater, continue to form new associative connections. They learn. Without a body, without the rest of the nervous system, without any signals from other parts of the organism, try to grasp for a moment what this means for our understanding of intelligence. We tend to think of learning as a function of the brain, that to learn, you need a complex centralized structure made up of billions of neurons organized into layers, zones, and modules. That intelligence is a product of complexity, and the more neurons there are, the smarter the creature. The jellyfish disproves each of these claims. It doesn't just question them or blur the lines. It outright disproves them, experimentally, reproducibly, and unequivocally. And this refutation has direct practical implications. Robotics and artificial intelligence experts have struggled for years with the problem that can be framed like this: how to create a system that can act autonomously in an unpredictable environment without constant communication with a central processor. An underwater robot that explores the ocean floor and can't ask the operator what to do every second. A swarm of drones that must coordinate with each other but lack a single command center. A medical nanobot that navigates the bloodstream and must decide for itself where to go and when to stop. The jellyfish solved this problem hundreds of millions of years ago. Its nervous system is a swarm of autonomous agents, each processing information, making decisions, and learning independently, while somehow coordinating with the others to ensure the organism behaves as a whole. There's no boss, no control center, no single point whose failure would collapse the entire system. This isn't a metaphor or a pretty analogy. It's literally a working engineering scheme that is now being replicated in laboratories around the world. Now let's recall the discovery from 2024 about the comb jelly Nemiopsis and its ability for reverse development. We already discussed this in the second part, but let's linger on it once more, because the scale of this discovery seems not yet fully realized, even by the scientific community itself. Comb jellies are not jellyfish. They look similar, they're also transparent and jelly-like, but genetically, they are worlds apart. According to current data, comb jellies are the oldest branch of multicellular animals. They diverged from the common ancestor of all multicellular organisms earlier than anyone else, earlier than sponges, earlier than sea cnidarians, which include jellyfish, earlier than all other animals on Earth. And if these two organisms, cnidarians and comb jellies, separated by more than 600 million years of evolution, are both capable of reverse development, then this ability likely did not arise independently twice. It was present in their common ancestor. In the earliest multicellular animal that swam in the Precambrian oceans at a time when all life on Earth could fit under a microscope. This leads to a conclusion that upends the conventional view. We tend to think of aging as the norm, and immortality as an anomaly, a rare trick mastered by one peculiar jellyfish. But if reverse development is an inherent property of multicellular life, then the opposite is true. Immortality was the norm, and aging is what happened later. It's an acquired trait, a side effect of complexity, the price that lineages paid for developing a brain, skeleton, immune system, and other advanced structures. Jellyfish and comb jellies didn't acquire immortality, they simply never lost it. This is, of course, a hypothesis, and it will require many more years of research to confirm or refute. But the very fact that such a hypothesis has become possible through the study of jellyfish and comb jellies shows how fundamentally these organisms are changing our understanding of life. Let's talk about another direction, the use of jellyfish to explore the ocean. We mentioned John Dabiri from Caltech in the first part, but let's delve into what he's doing, because this is one of the boldest projects in modern oceanography. Dabiri takes live jellyfish and equips them with miniature electronics. Tiny devices are attached to the jellyfish's body and send weak electrical impulses that control the contractions of the bell. The jellyfish experiences no stress. It has no pain receptors in the traditional sense, and its behavior remains normal. It simply swims faster and in a designated direction. Its swimming speed increases threefold with minimal energy expenditure. These biohybrid jellyfish can carry scientific sensors, measuring temperature, salinity, pressure, acidity, and dive to depths that pose serious challenges for conventional underwater vehicles. Deep-sea drones cost millions of dollars, require complex maintenance, operate on batteries with limited resources, and create noise that scares marine animals and distorts data. The jellyfish costs nothing. It feeds itself. It's silent. It leaves no ecological footprint, and it thrives at any depth because its body is essentially water and water. Moreover, there's another aspect that is often overlooked. The world's oceans are the largest and least explored environment on the planet. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the bottoms of our own oceans. Traditional research methods, ships, submersibles, drones, are expensive, slow, and cover a tiny fraction of ocean space. If Dabiri and his colleagues can turn jellyfish into a mass platform for data collection, it will change oceanography as radically as satellites changed meteorology. Thousands, tens of thousands of live jellyfish with sensors distributed throughout the ocean, transmitting data in real time. It sounds fantastic, but every single component of this system already exists and works. We should also remember the experiment from 1991 on the Space Shuttle Columbia, when jellyfish were sent into space. 2,500 polyps went into orbit, and in microgravity, they grew into jellyfish. They grew normally, but with one difference: their gravitational sensors developed differently. And when these jellyfish were returned to Earth, they couldn't orient themselves properly. Jellyfish born in space didn't know how to live under normal gravity. This experiment provided scientists with data on how microgravity affects the development of sensory systems, information that is crucial for understanding the risks of long-duration spaceflights for humans. And now let's pause and look at this entire story as a whole, because there's something more here than just a collection of amazing facts about a specific animal. The jellyfish makes us reconsider three things we've come to take for granted. First, a brain is necessary for learning. No, it's not necessary. 1,000 neurons can handle associative learning in just 7 minutes without central coordination, and a piece of nervous tissue can learn on its own in a petri dish. Centralization is one way to organize intelligence, but it's not the only one, and perhaps not even the most reliable. Second, complexity is necessary for survival. The jellyfish has existed longer than any other known animal. It has survived 5 mass extinctions, each of which wiped out most complex organisms. It lacks any organ we consider essential for a real animal. No brain, no heart, no blood, no bones. Yet it's still here, while trilobites, dinosaurs, and saber-toothed tigers are not. Complexity doesn't guarantee survival, and simplicity doesn't mean vulnerability. Third, aging is inevitable. At least one jellyfish, and possibly one ctenophore, has found a way to bypass aging by restarting its life cycle from scratch. There's reason to believe that this ability isn't a late evolutionary novelty, but a very ancient, possibly fundamental trait of multicellular life. We age not because it's a law of nature, but because our evolutionary line chose different priorities and paid that price. Everything we consider essential, brain for thinking, complexity for resilience, aging as an inevitable end, turns out to be just one of many possible solutions. A solution chosen by our branch of evolution, but not the only one. The jellyfish offers an alternative, a distributed system without a center that learns and adapts, immortality without identity, an organism restarts but doesn't remember who it was. Learning without long-term memory of past lessons, each ropalium forms connections anew, in real time. This isn't worse or better than our way of existing, it's fundamentally different. Another operating system for life. Nature doesn't strive for complexity's sake. It doesn't move in a straight line from primitive to perfect, from simple to complex, from foolish to wise. We think that way because we place ourselves at the top of this imaginary ladder. Nature aims for what works. And if something has worked for 500 million years without a brain, heart, or a single bone, then it's working better than almost everything else tested throughout the history of life on Earth. The jellyfish isn't a dead-end branch of evolution or a primitive relic from the past. It's one of the most successful projects in the history of biology, and it's still here, quietly pulsing in the dark water while we debate what it means to be intelligent.